Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. As Carrie mentioned, CTA just conducted a new research study that is available now to download on the website, and if you're a member, it's free. Just want to make that plug. Essentially, what we did with this research, we conducted it in two phases. The first was some secondary desk research where we went out and looked at various use cases in the US as well as Europe and China to see what other countries are doing and how they compare with the US. And then the second part was a quantitative survey to consumers themselves. So overall, our study objectives are here on screen. I'm not sure if you can read it or not, but we had four main objectives for the study. We wanted to identify some of these main areas where consumers might be interacting with robotics in the future. And when I say future, within the next couple years or even today. And then we wanted to measure some basic consumer awareness around various robotics categories, understand their current use and current openness to using robotics in various scenarios, and then also gauging their general consumer sentiment, what they think about robotics in various areas. The type of consumer that we went out to a general population sample in the US of US adults, and we found that approximately 45% of US adults have some sort of basic awareness about robotics, and that equates to about 114 million US adults. So some of the numbers that you see in the report today are based on that smaller subset of US adults. Now I'm going to get into some of the use cases that we dove into within this research. The first use case is around caregiving and healthcare robotics. And when we're thinking about the robotics that we researched in this report, we're focusing on those types of robots and that a consumer will physically be interacting with, as opposed to some of those more manufacturing types of robotics and business use cases. So keep that in mind when we're talking about things like caregiving and healthcare especially. So throughout this section of the report, we're going to pull in some examples of some of the robots that we found both in the US and internationally. So when we're talking about caregiving and healthcare robotics, we're talking about things like robots in the home that can provide companionship, that can remind you about taking certain medications, and also, providing video connections or social connections to loved ones or friends. So the example you see on screen is actually, it's called BotCare, it's from Samsung, and it offers at-home medical support. So it helps alleviate the need to go into the doctor, it helps seniors stay in their homes longer, and it has a lot of interesting safety features to it, so things like fall detection and making sure that your loved one is okay in their home and can actually call for help if necessary. The next category we looked at was mobility, product, and food delivery robots, and this covers a lot of different aspects. The example you see on screen is actually an autonomous home delivery robot that is used by JD.com in China, and the way that this robot works is that it goes around town delivering packages essentially, but there's 20 compartments within this robot that a consumer can approach and use facial recognition technology to retrieve their package. So it's another one of those last mile delivery robots that you see with a lot of sophisticated technology built in. So this is another category that we addressed, as well as household application robots. You think of your traditional Roomba, for example, that would be categorized under here. The example on screen is a robotic lawnmower. So there's a lot of different use cases outside of just the vacuum cleaner that you typically think of when you think of at-home robots. There's also things like window washing robotics, which I wish I had one at home, among others. Then another category we looked at were leisure and recreation robots. So these are kind of your fun robots, your robotic pets, toys, even luggage is in there. And this is Mikamon. It's a gaming robot. It's an intelligent gaming robot. And you can play certain games controlled through an app. And this is another category that we looked at. And then also, we looked at retail and concierge robots. Has anybody been in a hotel and seen a concierge robot before? Yeah, pretty awesome, right? You get your Starbucks delivered by a robot. So this is a Tori. It's an inventory robot for stores. And it actually has the ability to check inventory at 10 times the speed of a human. So it's creating additional efficiency in stores. Also, you could use this in a grocery store, for example, that has a lot of items on the shelf that would take someone a very long time to get through. You can use a robot for that. And then finally, we touched on educational and STEM-related robots. And these are, of course, focused on learning activities and things like teaching children how to code. And this robot you see on screen, it's a really cute photo. It's called Kiko. It's used in China currently with kindergarteners. And it tells them stories and teaches them how to solve certain problems. Very, very cool robot. So across all these robots, we wanted to take a look at what the estimated growth potential is. And on screen, you'll see across the board there is a lot of opportunity and projected growth. The top two largest markets that we identified were the retail and hospitality space. So things like that inventory robot, like the concierge robot that you might see in a hotel, and then mobility and delivery as well, things that are delivering your packages, per se, like the JD.com robot that I had on screen a couple slides ago. But across the board, we do see a lot of growth. Most of the categories are seeing at least 20% growth over the next 7 years. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the individual categories a bit more. So we're going to start with healthcare and caregiving robots. So we see a little bit more detail in terms of the growth potential for this category. And we're seeing by 2025 that the market size is estimated around $1.3 billion. When we went out to consumers, we wanted to measure how many folks were aware of these robotics. And right now we're seeing almost 2/3, around 59%, claim that they are aware of healthcare and caregiving robots. And then when we ask them how open they are about using healthcare robotics, 67% are open in this area. And some of the key benefits that they're seeing is that they believe that they're going to have a cost effectiveness. We mentioned those at-home care robotics, things that are assisting you with not having to go to the doctor as often, you being able to get some of that care in home. That's what a lot of consumers were saying. It's going to keep their seniors at home longer. But also time saving. Time saving is a huge benefit. Again, you think of the advancements in telemedicine, how much time you saved using a telemedicine opportunities. So those are some of the key benefits our consumers identified. And then we also touched on some of the key concerns in this area. In general, a lot of people were mentioning that they prefer humans to perform the tasks. So some of those more kind of bedside manner things that you see within the healthcare space, they are still thinking they prefer human for some of these things. And it's a category where we expect to see some hesitation given that it's healthcare. And so the second main concern in this category is that consumers had some doubt that the robots could perform tasks safely and effectively. So this is where things like clinical evidence and further evidence will help benefit this category. Next is mobility and delivery robots. There is a lot of interest in this category. As you see, there's a $44 billion potential growth in market size by 2025, and 70% of the consumers we went out to are aware, and 84% are open to using robotics in this category. Again, some of the key benefits we saw: cost-effective, time savings. People are very used to getting their packages right away. This, goes beyond the one-day delivery. It can go up to, 1 hour delivery, and maybe even 5-minute delivery someday. So time saving is definitely a key benefit here. Additionally, they had a couple key concerns. Again, some people prefer to have that kind of human interaction, but potential for theft came up with this one. So if you look back on the example I had earlier, the JD.com robot, that's using facial recognition, which is providing that additional security. So being able to thread some of these additional technology within robotics, I think, will help with consumer acceptance. Next are household applications and chores robots. So again, like your robotic vacuum and your lawnmower and window cleaner. So another big opportunity area, 88%. Almost 9 out of 10 of the consumers we spoke to are aware of this category, and 90% are open to it. So another large number here. Key benefits: makes life easier. I think that's, not a surprise. Everybody wants someone to vacuum for them or mow their lawn for them, so definitely makes life easier and also time-saving again. But a key concern that came up throughout our research was the expense when it comes to household applications and chores robots. They were worried a little bit about how much they're going to actually cost. Next are leisure and recreation robots, so some of the fun at-home robotic pets, etc. Another big growth area, around $29 billion are estimated by 2025. Awareness here, 91%, so slightly higher than the chores robots that we just saw. 81% are open to using these. Key benefits, entertainment, they're fun. Key concerns, they don't think they need them. They're too expensive. So I think in this category, addressing some of the costs and price of these robots will definitely aid in consumers adopting them. So just keeping an eye out on that. The next are retail and hospitality robots. We find that the estimated market size growth for this is estimated around $72 billion by 2025, a very large growth. I believe it's the largest growth across all the categories that we looked at. 62% are aware, so slightly lower, but 83% are open to using robotics in this category. Key benefits, cost-effective, time-saving, better performance than a human. And then finally, for the retail and hospitality portion, again, we have the human interaction. People aren't ready to give up the human interaction just yet, but that also differs by age and various demographics. So. And then finally, the educational and STEM robots area. Interestingly enough, we didn't see many key barriers or takeaways from this one. Mostly just all benefits. People really are into educational and STEM related robots. They see that, it gives confidence in how people are taught. If they're, taught by a robot to build a robot, they have confidence in that. And many people mention that they believe these robots will have better performance than a human, which is unique compared to the other categories that we looked at. If you remember, the key barriers for pretty much the rest of the robots we looked at was that human factor. 81%, so about 4 out of 5, are aware of robots in this category, and 92%, so the highest in terms of openness to using robots for educational applications. All right, and we'll touch a little bit on future impact of consumer robotics, which I think you'll discuss over the next few hours, so I'll only talk about it for about a minute, is that overall there is a universal enthusiasm for robotics. We're finding that 84% have a positive overall view towards the robotics categories that we touched on in this research, which that equates to about 96 million U.S. adults when we scale up our percentage within the research. So again, some of the demographics that we saw, definitely more acceptedness if they majored in a STEM-related degree. Males, ages 35 to 44, and those with higher incomes have a more significant acceptance and positive view of robots. So one of the questions that we asked in the research is, what one task would you welcome a robot to help you with in the future, or would want to help you with the future? Overwhelmingly, people were going back to those chore robots that we spoke of, which is interesting because if you remember, that had a little bit lower in terms of potential need. There were some barriers to costs, et cetera, and 58% unaidedly mentioned that they would like robots to help them with things like laundry and cleaning and painting. But some of the other mentions up here included things like cooking, day-to-day assistance in healthcare, finances was mentioned as well, so another interesting aspect of robots. And then we asked when they believe robotics technology will have an impact on their daily life. And if you see on screen, overall, a majority feel like robots are here, and they believe within the next 5 years, they're going to be interacting with robotics every single day. So I thought this was an interesting stat here that 6% say it will never have an impact on their daily life. And that's driven by certain demographics. Much older consumers felt that way. And then we also found that only about 5% say that it's going to have an impact more than 10 years down the line, which is a very small percentage if you look at the overall sample here. And as a reminder, the full robotics report is available now on the CTA website. If you go to cta.tech/research, all of our research reports are posted there, and they're free for CTA members. So thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Carrie.